Alright guys, welcome back to another episode. My name is Erin. I hope you're doing well. If you haven't watched any of these before, if you haven't listened before, my background is in health and fitness. I coach fitness, been coaching fitness for over 10 years, and I worked in the healthcare fields as an advanced EMT for a little over 3 years, and my goal is to help you guys improve your lives in any way possible through mental, physical, and emotional health. And so today, we are going to be talking about relationships. And I know this doesn't necessarily fall directly under like physical fitness, but it does fall into mental health, being in relationships. And so what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about some statistics that are out there and the importance of relationships. And I also want to share some of my personal story regarding relationships and those kinds of things, and you know, just kind of walking through it, because I think I talk about this a lot, but I think a lot has changed since 2020 in the world, especially concerning relationships and connections and those kinds of things. And I think it's really important to address it because I still don't feel like we have 100% gotten back to where we used to be prior to all of that. So today we're going to be talking about relationships. I'm also going to be referencing this book. It's called Building a Non-Anxious Life by Dr. John Deloney. He's absolutely amazing. I have no affiliations, connections, or anything with this book or him. I just love his podcasts and his work and his books. And this book is awesome. If that's something you struggle with, please, please, please get this book, read it, apply it, and let it change your life. But let's talk about relationships for a minute. I really firmly believe that as a society, we are deeply lacking the relationships that we used to have and value so much in the world. And I'm going to talk about the pandemic a lot because I think that it created almost a new way of living through social media where we are so disassociated from people that our lives suffer deeply because of it. I think some aspects are great, and I think a lot of good things have come through social media, but I think what we don't realize is that it's not reality, and it's not the same as connecting with someone face to face and in person. You know, we think we know somebody, we think we know what's going on in their lives, we feel a part of them, we feel connected to them, we watch their YouTube videos, their TikTok, their Instagram, and we're like, oh, they're going through what I'm going through, and we feel this sense of connection through their level of vulnerability. But what we don't realize is that's not an actual relationship that we have with a real person. They're not somebody we're gonna call in the middle of the night for an emergency. They're not somebody we're gonna go sit down and have coffee with or, you know, physically share our life with. And I think we forget to place value in those kinds of relationships because the social media relationships are so numerous. There's so many of them that we feel like we have. At least I know for me that's true. And then we neglect the relationships that are face to face. So that being said, I kind of want to read some statistics out of this book for you guys. And there's so many that you can also look up online. I wanted to pull them from this book specifically because there's an entire chapter called Choose Connection. And it's about choosing relationships. And so it says here, in 2020, the Ramsey Solutions team did a mass survey study on mental health, relationships, and well-being through thousands of Americans. And I'm going to read off the highlighted ones that he has in here. So it says 82% of people say that those they spend the most time with don't know them deeply. So I really want you to think about that. If you're like, somebody that knows me deeply, like how many of those people are there? Then the next one says 68% of people say they have 3 or fewer close friends. It's about 7 out of 10 say they have 3 or fewer close friends. And close friends are people you'd call like if your dad was having surgery, for instance. Sorry, that was a little one having a question. She came in here and asked me about a cookie. No big deal. I don't like to edit my videos as much as possible, so if I do have to edit it, I want you guys to know why. So anyway, it was saying that close friends are people you would call if your dad's having surgery, your car broke down, you went out of town, and your phone got a phone notification about your house, something like that. So It says 68% of people have 3 or fewer close friends. That's a high number. Then it says here that more than half, so 54% of the respondents reported they don't have a friend they feel comfortable calling in the middle of the night for an emergency. That's kind of a big one, and I can resonate with that. And then the last one is, it says that nearly half, so 47% of married couples admit to struggling with sexual intimacy and other personal things with emotional intimacy with their spouse, and they don't feel like they have anyone to talk to about it. And your spouse is supposed to be your best friend. So that's a pretty shocking statistic as well. And I just think it's interesting, you know, these are all big points in our life, and you know, 82% of us don't have a friend we have deeply, 68% of us only have 3 or more friends, 54% of us don't have someone we'd call in the middle of the night, and 47% of us say that we struggle in our friendship, our relationship with our spouse. And those are some pretty startling numbers. And I think that really began during the pandemic. And this is kind of where I want to share part of my story. In that, so I, to some degree, since I was really little, have struggled with anxiety and panic attacks. I don't exactly have a pinpoint when they started, but I do know that I was around 12 years old. And I've had an on and off struggle with that for most of my life. In 2020, a little bit before 2020 started, some life events happened. We had our son in 2018. My mom got diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019 and almost died. And it was like the end. It was like September 2019. I got really sick with hand, foot, and mouth. Ended up in the hospital like 3 months after our son was born. And I just became really anxious and panicky and started going down this rabbit hole about passing away, not being there for my son, not being what he needed, him being motherless. And I just kind of started spiraling, to be honest with you. And it brought about a lot of phobias. So I was scared to go out and about and maybe get sick or him get sick. I was scared to touch things that were maybe dirty. And I just began to build this really big plot line in my head of really big, bad, scary things. And so I stopped going places and I stopped seeing people. And then with my mom having cancer, I started to get really worried that I was gonna get her sick. And I mean, she was already so sick, but it was like, you know, if you give her a cold, she's gonna die. So that just perpetuated the phobias. So I ended up quitting my job at the hospital as an AEMT, and I currently stopped going to the gym that I owned. I stopped coaching. I was just spiraling. It was really bad. It was a really negative place to be. But one of the main things I also did is I started cutting out relationships. I stopped talking to people. I didn't share anything with anybody. Nobody. I didn't share anything with anyone. My husband was the only one that knew because I was too embarrassed. And it started to get really toxic. And then in January of 2020, we found out I was pregnant with our daughter. So then you add hormones on top of all of that, and it created an even worse environment where now I have hormones and I'm panicking and I have these phobias, and our gym was starting to fail because of decisions I had made for not showing up and not coaching anymore because of those phobias. And my mom is dying and I'm trying to spend time with her. And so that was spiraling. All these things were going on, right? And I just began cutting every single person out of my life. I was like, I don't need anybody. I don't want to be around anyone. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want anything to do with anyone because it's too embarrassing and I can't do life with them. And then you hit March of 2020 when the pandemic happened, and I tanked. I mean, I hit rock bottom. I thought everybody was gonna die. I was scared of everything. I did not leave my house. I genuinely mean this. I didn't go in the backyard. I didn't go in the front yard. I didn't step foot outside for about 6 months because I was so scared. and nobody knew what was going on because I refused to choose to have a relationship with anybody. The only person was my husband, and bless him, it's a miracle that he stayed with me through all of that and supported me. I'm so lucky to have him in my life. But our marriage was doing awful because of all of that. And I really think that if I would have chose relationships over the fear of what people were going to think of me, that those relationships could have helped me get out of the hole that I was in. Because when push came to shove, so I dealt with those things through all of 2020. I still deal with these things to some degree. I dealt with those through all of 2020, and then we found out that my husband was getting deployed in 2021. And it was a slap in the face because it was, you're going to have a newborn baby girl when he leaves, and you have a 2-year-old son that you have to take care of, and you either have to put your big girl pants on and take care of your family, or nothing. There wasn't an or. Like, there wasn't another option. And that's when I began reaching out to people and trying to recreate relationships and share what was going on in our life, in my life. I went back to counseling, which is a relationship, right? You have a relationship with your psychiatrist or your counselor, or somebody that you can talk to. And that's really when things began to change for me, because I realized, like, I wasn't crazy. There were things that had been built up in my life and circumstances and decisions made and neural pathways from the choices that I made that made me feel the way that I felt. And having those relationships, genuinely talking to people and being vulnerable to the right people and being brave enough to spend time like with society again, began to change my view on what I was going through, how I should behave, how I needed to behave. I remember one of the biggest turning points was I had one of my best friends. She came down from Texas with her son while my husband was gone and stayed with me, and I hadn't seen her in forever. Her also military family. And I remember because I'd finally opened up to her about what was going on, and when she got there, she was like, "What do you need me to do?" She's like, "Do you want me to take my shoes off? Would you like me to wash my hands? Do you want me to pick this up for you? Do you want me to clean this for you?" And I just realized how much she genuinely cared about me. She wasn't judging me. She wasn't saying I was crazy or a bad person. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. But her trip out there began to change my thoughts about myself, about what I could do, about how I could handle things. And it reminded me that somebody cares about me. And it's so silly because I think what can happen is we begin to shut people out and we isolate and we isolate and we isolate. And we're like, I can't trust them and I can't talk to them. And, you know, there is vulnerability in relationship. And there are some people in my life that I shared things with and they were like, "You're being ridiculous." And that did hurt. And I think that's why we don't want to open up, because there is a chance that they're not going to like what you're saying, or they're not going to agree, or they're not going to be supportive in the way that you want them to support you. But there's also going to be people on the other side that do, and they do love you, and they will support you, and they will be there for you, and they just want to do life with you because they're your friend. And I remember, I think she came and spent it was almost like a week with me, with her kiddo, and the love that she showed me, like the unconditional love that she gave me for what I was walking through, reminded me in that moment the importance of relationships and being around other people and being in society and not shutting down. And I think, like I said earlier, because of the pandemic, it's so easy to just do everything on your phone. I even think about this fitness wise, right? And I'm grateful for it. I do coach people online currently, and we have an online community, and that online community is great. but it will never be the same as when I had the gym and people walked in the door and I could give them a high five or shake their hand or give them a hug and love on them and talk to them face to face. And we would do an event and we'd all be eating together, or we'd all go out to lunch or go out to dinner or something. There's something special about that connection. And I think it's because God created us to be in relation with other people, because he wants to be in relation with us, and we're made in his image. So we want to be in relation with other people. And when we begin to isolate ourselves, it gives the devil a foothold to step in and say whatever he wants to say, whisper whatever he wants to whisper in your ear, and there's nobody else around to say that's not true. And so I want to encourage you that if this is something that you're struggling with, be vulnerable. Be wise with who you're going to reach out to. Be wise with who you're going to talk to and share things with. And I think that's where social media gets hard, because people are like, oh, I'm going to make all the friends, I'm going to share everything, be super vulnerable on social media. But I'm talking about a face-to-face relationship, a face-to-face connection with friends, family, people in your life, because it will change your life. And it will change your mental health for the better. And you have to be in those relationships where you care about one another. And I think originally, back in the day, that's why I so fell in love with CrossFit. Because it was community. You were stepping into a community where you supported each other and you all had the same goal, and you're all dying together on the gym floor and you're cheering each other on, and it built relationships. I mean, there were people I know that met in the gym and got married later or became best friends. I mean, one of my very best friends in the whole wide world, I met her because of that. I met her, she came into the gym, she became a coach, we became best friends, and to this day, she's still one of my best friends in the whole wide world. But it was because of that face-to-face relationship. It wasn't because of somebody I met on a screen, right? And so while I am using these platforms to reach out to you guys and to share with you guys, I want to encourage you to get with real people. Even for the people that I coach in my program, like I tell them, like, do it with a friend. Find somebody that lives with you so you can be with a friend in person, so you can talk to them, you can see each other, you can struggle, you can do life together, you can do the hard things together, because you have to have those relationships. Because if you don't, that isolation is so heavy. The weight of feeling like you're doing things alone is so heavy that you cannot handle it. You cannot handle it. And I got to that place at one point where I felt like I can't handle this anymore. And that's another story for another time. But when you have people around you that you can reach out to, it will change your life. So even if it's something as simple as fitness, in the weight loss space, find a community at a gym or a community online and do it with a friend in person, to where you guys can be there for each other. You could show up for each other. You can walk through the struggles together. You can talk about the hardships together. You can lean on one another, and you can celebrate the victories together. Like, find a community. That's another reason I love jiu-jitsu, because we go and we get on the mats for an hour and a half. We get the crap beaten out of us, but we're all suffering together, and then we're celebrating together. Like, we go and watch each other at competitions, and we cheer each other on, and we celebrate our victories, and we walk through our losses together. But you have to do life together, because we were created to do life together. We were not created to do it alone. And I'm speaking for myself right now. I deal with a lot of things with our kids as a mother that I don't talk about and I don't share because it's embarrassing, and I get very lonely in that area. And then my husband will remind me, like, hey, why don't you call somebody and go to lunch and talk with them about this? And it's like, yeah, you know what? I should. And then when I do, I realize I'm not alone, and the other moms are out there, and we're all going through the same thing, and we're all struggling. And so we have to have that connection. And I wanted to look at one more thing in this book, and then I won't keep you guys for forever. Let me find it. One second. So I want to read you. He has, and I'm not going to spoil this book for you, because I want you to go out in bio. But he does give 2 tips that I think are, well, I'm skipping a page. 3 tips that I think are so good for love and friendship. That's what it says. It says tactical tips for love and friendship. And I'm just gonna read you it really fast, and then if you have any comments, we can talk about it. But the first one says, love and friendship are skills that you practice. You have to practice love and friendship, which means you have to show up. You have to go to the breakfast. You have to go to the dinner, the lunch, the outing. You have to be on time. You have to lend a hand. You have to be willing to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there. But it's a skill that you have to practice. So it's not always easy. Sometimes you have to be the one to say, hey, like, why don't you guys come over for lunch or come over for dinner, or we're having this party. And you know what? Everybody might say no. Or one person might say yes, and that might be the relationship that makes all the difference in your life. So you have to practice it. The second one says, love and friendship are not about always having the right thing to say. And I think that's really important, because I think sometimes we get into, well, I don't know what to say, and I don't want there to be awkward silence, and I don't want it to be a weird experience, and I barely know them. But you don't have to know exactly what to say to be able to connect on a personal relationship. One of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was connect with someone in any way, shape, or form that matches something you enjoy. So maybe you start talking about football and they're like, oh, I hate football. Well, don't just hang out about football. Don't be like, oh, I don't know what to say now. I don't know about football. Move on. Ask something about something else. Okay, football wasn't the right thing to say. That's okay. We're going to move on. We're going to find another common ground. Your goal should be to find common ground with somebody. And then the last one says, friendship and love mean considering the needs of others before your own. And so I think reminding yourself that when you're in a relationship, you have to be giving and be selfless to some degree. It's super important to be able to know that you can walk through life with someone, and that when they need your help, they can depend on you, and when you need their help, you can depend on them. So I hope this helps you guys. I hope it encourages you to reach out to somebody, make a connection, make a friendship, and make it value. If you have any questions or comments, you want to talk about it, please let me know. Also, like I said, I do online coaching for nutrition. There is some mental health stuff in there. There's also programming, which is my favorite thing. It's called Driven Fitness. If you want to be a part of that, please click the link in the description. We do have a really good community, but like I said, I do encourage you to find a community in person as well. And then if you guys will please like and subscribe, it does help so much. Share this video with someone, or share the podcast if you're listening. And I hope you guys have a great day. And please just remember to take it one step at a time. We'll see you guys next time.